welcome to the 2023 conference of the International Forum for the Aftercare of Racehorses. This is the 7th IFAR conference held in conjunction with the 39th Asian Racing Conference. And as I said, a huge welcome to everybody here to Melbourne, Australia. In the next 3 hours, we'll hear some hugely informative, entertaining and ultimately vitally important ideas and updates from around the globe about world's best practice in thoroughbred aftercare, promoting thoroughbreds away from the racing and breeding industry and assisting owners and the equestrian world, importantly, in their transition into a successful ongoing career. My name's Searcy. I host and produce a show that airs on Sky Racing Australia called Thoroughbreds Are Go, which encompasses all the factors that I just mentioned. I've bred, raced and rehomed 4 of my own horses, and they've all come back to me through various circumstances, through drought or through owners wanting to change, what they're doing and not wanting that horse anymore. So I well and truly know that the trials and tribulations of trying to rehome thoroughbreds in the current environment. I've been fortunate enough to have spoken at a number of IFAR conferences and preceding them, right back to the eye-opening 2015 conference that was supported by Godolphin that was in Kentucky. That was just a fabulous event to start things off. This year's IFAR conference brings together speakers from around the world, including, of course, Australia, from Korea, Japan, Hong Kong and the Emirates Racing Authority. And the IFAR Charter, as you'll hear throughout the afternoon, is to really promote the aftercare of racehorses within all jurisdictions around the world. Care of our thoroughbreds away from the racetrack has really come a long way, particularly in the last 10 years or so. There are so many dedicated programs around the world that really assist in the retraining of this wonderful, adaptable, intelligent, sensitive and athletic breed of horse. But of course, there's still so much more that needs to be done. Traceability, which reaches into the equestrian world, well beyond that first transition out of the racing industry. Communication, obviously telling the world outside our racing bubble the stories of the progress that's actually being made, and changing the way the topic's discussed. As we've discussed at these IFAR conferences in the past, we're not talking about welfare in particular. These horses aren't flawed in the main. They're not rescue cases. They don't necessarily need rehabilitation. They're not damaged. Some may have been injured, but the majority don't need rehabilitation. They need retraining. They're dynamic, exciting companions for so many people. They can obviously race the clock at speed over a 3-day event course. They can drop their head and be so responsive doing dressage or the lovely extended trots the thoroughbreds can do in the show world as well. And they can just be as equally as happy with a young disabled rider just quietly taking them around and understanding their needs as well. So the thoroughbred is a unique breed, as we all know, I think, here in this room, and we really owe it to them to give them a kind and well cared for whole of life. To officially open the 7th IFAR conference, please make welcome the one and only, the former dynamic leader of world-leading retraining of racehorses, or ROR, for over 20 years, and of course now chair of IFAR, Di Arbuthnot. Please welcome Di.
Thank you so much, Caroline. And what a thrill for us all that, on behalf of IFAR, that there are so many of you here today. Who would have thought that when we launched in 2016, that so many are here, so many are engaged with what we all see as aftercare. Now, this is my first trip to Australia. I got off the plane and Caroline whisked me off to a 10-race card at Randwick. I then went to Inglis Sales. And then I looked at this amazing event, equestrian centre called Stonewall, an hour out of Sydney, where they're putting on a huge programme of thoroughbred events. So that was my first taste, if you like, of Sydney, and then, of course, here in Melbourne. Just before I move on to that, the reason so many of you are here is the huge hard work of Dr. Elliot Forbes and his team. They've really ramped this up today. It's fantastic that they've got so many people interested. And of course, our huge thanks to the JRA, our sponsors and supporters. Now, we started off this morning at a wonderful trip to Spring Creek, which is about an hour away from here, and we watched one of the retraining programs here and where they're producing ex-race horses for competition, mainly for competition, but also, of course, helping riders with their thoroughbreds to move forward and retrain their horses and look towards competition. They're one of the 50 programs in the area. There's so much more that happens here in Australia. But, you know, this is something that's really taken off here, particularly in Racing Victoria. And, of course, we're going to hear from Queensland Racing later as well, a program there. So for many of you, might have seen our video magazine. Unfortunately, it didn't work on the bus this morning going to Spring Creek. But I just want to talk you through what we saw in this video magazine, because we asked a number of countries that were having a program to send in a video of what they were doing, and it just shows the diversity of the way several countries are approaching aftercare. So I'll start with at home in the UK. We've been going 20 years now. And when we started, it was quite new around the world. What was anybody doing in this space? And really, there wasn't very much. And our view on it was that we had 1 million riders, riders of horses, that we had some land. We didn't have a lot of money, but what we would do is try and change people's attitude to the thoroughbred and make it fashionable again, because it was years before. Let's make it fashionable. Let's make people want to take on a thoroughbred off the track instead of a warm blood. So we produced a program that we now have activities in 15 different equestrian programs. We run an education scheme along with that, and we just promote, and we're giving these horses an active life in as many different ways as we possibly can. So that was the UK's way of dealing with it. We move on to the to the US. What are they doing in America? Well, again, when we went over there 20 years ago, not much was happening, but now look at what they're doing. I mean, their makeover program is terrific. The TAA, the dynamic Stacey, for those of you who have met her, with her program of accredited trainers is huge. There's the Best Friends program. There's everywhere they're doing something in America. So again, absolutely stepped up a level. And then, of course, we move on to France, Eau de la Piste. Now, they started and they're doing accredited retrainers. But what I really take home from there is that if you go to Deauville in a couple of the meetings or any of the many other racetracks, you'll see these exhibitions of retrained racehorses in the middle of racing. We couldn't do that at home, but they can do it there. So that's a great initiative to really bring racing and the racing public behind them. Then you go to Ireland, again, so Triella, I can never say this, but it's a new direction, and they really are taking a new direction. So there was a great show jumping competition with the jockeys the other day. They showed a lovely racehorse owned by someone in this room and her mother that had done particularly well racing and was parading at Punchestown. And the message from there was what a tremendous joy that horse had been to them in racing, but certainly after racing as well. So that's a big message, a lot going on in Ireland. Now we come to Asia. The JRA, of course, are using a lot of horses through their riding club system. And then in Hong Kong, we know Hong Kong have got their marvellous program in Happy Valley, and the new place over the border in China where that's a rehab pre going into retraining. So Dubai, a retraining program. So many countries really getting behind this, and we asked for them to send in videos, and they have. And it's really moving for us as IFAR, how this has moved on, particularly in the last 3 years. So win all round, and a huge credit to all of you that have been behind and worked so hard at this. So are there challenges? Yes, there are challenges. There will always be challenges for this. but the one that stands out to me is the first line when I first started. It said, supply and demand. We've all got a supply of racehorses leaving the industry every year. How do you keep up demand? And that is so important. It doesn't matter whether it's competition, whether it's in the many equine therapy programs that are fantastic, whether it's just your happy hacker that somebody takes on a horse thinking they're going to do something, but actually they're just going to give that a lovely home. This is what all countries need to do, because that is welfare. That is showing the world that racing cares about its racehorses. Obviously, another challenge is funding. We all know that one. And then, of course, you're doing these great things, but you need to tell everyone you're doing this. You need to communicate. So those are the three challenges. Great way forward. As IFAR, what do we want to see in the future? We'd like to help us all, and you all, come together. Every racing jurisdiction have an aftercare program. That's where we started. Wherever your horse ends up, there should be a life after racing. Racing needs to get hold of this. Racing needs to own this and deliver an aftercare program all around the world. I look forward to seeing you in 2 years' time and seeing all these stories coming in. Thank you so much.